Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Breaking news, round 2 for the Texas A&M fans, as it sounds like Mike Elko is expected to be the next head coach at Texas A&M. And we talked last night about Coach Stoops and what it looks like for him at Texas A&M. We were both, it sounds like, a little bit more fans of the hire than most of the Texas A&M fans on Twitter. And Dill, I even like Mike Elko a little bit more. I mean, the Texas A&M ties as the defensive coordinator, knows how to recruit the state. And you talk about maximizing Duke as a program. I mean, Duke was 2-9, 3-9, heading into when Mike Elko took over the job. And he immediately, in his first year at Duke, with the talent being as bad as it was, goes 9-4. Mike Elko, what you're getting with him is a guy that's going to maximize the talent on this roster, manage a very, very tight program. And that's exactly what Texas A&M needs. When Jimbo Fisher got fired from Texas A&M, we said this is one of the best head coaching jobs that you see across the country. And a lot of people are going to argue that, and I get it. They haven't had as much success as some of the schools like Georgia and Alabama. You take a look at, you have everything you need to win a national championship in College Station. You need a head coach that can maximize it. Mike Elko maximized what he could do at Duke. Now he's going to Texas A&M, and if he maximizes what Texas A&M has and the resources they have and the talent they are able to acquire, this is going to be a really, really fun hire. Excited to get into it. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys and a shout out to the Texas A&M fans. This is going to be a really exciting next couple of weeks in terms of keeping names out of the portal, going out and getting names in the portal, see how the recruiting class holds up. We're going to be talking a lot of Texas A&M football. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, appreciate all the support you guys have shown the boys. Dill, going to give you the T-box here. Mike Elko heading to College Station. How are we feeling here?
Yeah, I like this hire. And again, you kind of mentioned a guy who at Duke was able to maximize what he had. And you argue like Mark Stoops kind of did the same thing at Kentucky. I think the upgrade for me in terms of what Elko could be is you really don't know what his ceiling is. At the end of the day, Mark Stoops' ceiling was essentially a 6-7 win coach. That's kind of where he got that program to. I know he had a couple of 10-win seasons thrown in there, but at the end of the day, it was 6 or 7 wins. That's about what he had in him. And I kind of get the Texas A&M fan sentiment a little bit like, well, we're paying a guy right now. We could be paying Jimbo Fisher $8, $9, $10 million bucks a year to kind of do a similar thing. Mike Elko, like he's risen up through the ranks at big colleges, along with what he did with obviously Coach Clausen through his period. But you kind of don't know what he could be. I think he does add a little bit more upside because we haven't really got to see him fully form into the coach he might be.
Mike Elko, you look at, and again, to go back to what he did at Duke, and I totally agree with this. You don't like, what would it have looked like at Duke 3 to 4 years from now? He won 7 games with a third-string quarterback in the ACC this year. And like, what would Duke as a program look like if he was there for 5 years? Because I'll tell you what, it didn't look like he was plateauing at Duke. And so I'm kind of with you, and I understand the sentiment of that Mark Stoops hit a plateau, right? He had that 10-win season twice, but he's kind of hovering around 7, 6, 7, 8 wins pretty consistently. There was an obvious plateau there he hit in Lexington. I don't know what the plateau would have been. Am I saying Duke would have been a national championship caliber team with Mike Elko? I don't know if I go that far, but you saw him take a Duke team that went 3-9 the year before with Coach Cutcliffe, and he immediately turned them around to go 9-4. One other thing that I'm really excited about Mike Elko, not only in terms of the player development and the maximizing of the talent on the roster, he is elite in the transfer portal. Like what he did in terms of going out and identifying talent and having those guys hit at a high level, a brilliant job of what Mike Elko did. And as a head coach, like that is part of the new job in the new era of college football, is using the transfer portal to benefit your roster. I don't know if you can point to many head coaches who have done it better the last 2 years than Coach Mike Elko did at Duke.
But also like the ability to identify talent. Because again, A&M, you can kind of go get whoever you want, right? Yeah. At least you can go put your hat in the ring for it. And Jimbo Fisher obviously was able to do that. He brought in big classes, but there just weren't enough hits. I mean, there were so many misses, so many guys who wound up in the portal or didn't fit or whatever. Mike Elko's really not had a big problem with that at Duke. I mean, you see when he gets the guys he wants in, like that defensive line, you probably have 2 to 3 pros on it. You have a couple of pros on the edge at wide receiver and a couple on the offensive line. Like that's at Duke, and that's a place where you really don't have the pick of the litter, if you will. So for him to come into the A&M job, you got to hope like the talent evaluation is clearly there. He can do that. Now he can go do it at a much higher level. He can go chase down the big dogs, and he's not hampered by what Duke is, which is a basketball school. And when you're at the basketball schools, it's hard to really win at a high level in football.
The talent evaluation, for sure, something he specializes in. But then, like the development and the schematics of his defense, I can't wait to see what a Mike Elko defense looks like at Texas A&M with all the talent that they have in the front seven and in the back end. If there's one thing that maybe doesn't get talked enough about, is Mike Elko, an elite program manager at Duke. But man, is he one of the best defensive-minded head coaches in the entire game. And Dill, what it sounds like is Coach Elijah Robinson going to stay on the staff as the new defensive coordinator. I would really like that too, because you look at the situation you're taking over at Texas A&M. That roster is one of the best rosters in college football. And what's the best way to keep this roster together? I mean, keeping Elijah Robinson. I don't think there's a coach on that staff that is more respected and more well-liked than Coach Robinson. You keep him here. You keep guys like Walter Nolan on this Texas A&M roster heading into 2024, and you combine that with Mike Elko and what he can do maximizing a defense, you're looking at one of the best defenses that we'll see in 2024 if that is able to take place.
Because at the end of the day, why Coach Robinson would be such a big get if he can essentially hire him to be the DC is you want to keep that defensive line intact. I mean,
Yes.
that defensive line is the reason A&M was really competitive. Now, the next big thing is he's going to have to hit on an offensive coordinator, because that hasn't been a hit in forever. And Bobby Petrino did an okay job. I give him any high marks. We'll see about what he does there, but I think that's gonna be a monster hire, because that's something we've been complaining about forever.
And he has Kevin Johns at Duke, and what you're feeling good about if you're a Texas A&M fan is Mike Elko has showed a very good ability to hire people around him in a short time at Duke. I mean, Kevin Johns was a phenomenal offensive coordinator. And you look at this year, yes, they were hamstrung by quarterback play that was obviously not ideal when you have to go to the third string quarterback. But you go back to that 2022 year. I mean, Riley Leonard was one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. He was a 3-star coming out of high school. This offense, or Mike Elko, showed the ability to go out and get an offensive coordinator that is really good. He's going to have a bigger budget to hire an offensive coordinator. You made a really good point. Mike Elko is massive news. This defense is going to be good as long as Mike Elko is in College Station. What does he do in the offensive coordinator spot is going to be a massive storyline, because if Mike Elko is going to reach the potential of this Texas A&M program, I think it's going to have to be on the back of a really, really good hire at the offensive coordinator position.
And frankly, another part is I think there probably will be more of an emphasis on having offensive linemen who can play at a high level, because we talk about quarterbacks and lack of creativity in the play calling. But at the end of the day, the offensive line's been really bad for most of Jimbo's tenure. It was really bad for most of his Florida State tenure too, and it was never emphasized. You saw Duke was essentially built. That offensive line is pretty much the driver of what they do on offense. It has Graham Barton, obviously going to go be a pro, in a unit that, again, could go stand up and play with a Clemson. As physical as Clemson is on defense, especially in that front seven, you saw Duke. I mean, they matched that. And again, he does not have the resources and capabilities at Duke to go after equal talent, essentially, but he's able to build that unit up nonetheless.
And you look at what Mike Elko, or why did Jimbo Fisher fail at Texas A&M, and why you have so much more confidence in Mike Elko? Jimbo Fisher just did not hire the people around him. Like Steve Adazio on that offensive line, I don't know why he was retained heading into the 2023 year. You talk about an offensive line that just was not even close to the development it needs to be. Mike Elko going to get his guys in there to kind of develop those positions. The offensive line is not going to be bad, because you're going to get a good offensive line coach in there. I'm going to trust that he hires the right offensive coordinator as well. And one last thing that I really do like about Mike Elko over Coach Stoops is he has a lot more experience recruiting the state of Texas than Coach Stoops does. Now, you had Coach Stoops. Where did he make his money on the recruiting trail? Was going up into the state of Ohio as a Youngstown native and recruiting the Midwest. That's not going to be Texas A&M's bread and butter on the recruiting trail. Mike Elko has been at Texas A&M. He recruited guys like Jalen Jones to Texas A&M. He has a little bit more experience recruiting the state. It's just another reason why Mike Elko seems to be a better fit than Coach Stoops. And again, I have a ton of respect for Coach Stoops. I wouldn't have been that upset if he was hired as Texas A&M's new head coach. But to have Mike Elko, I think it makes more sense on a multitude of platforms. And like you said, you haven't seen his ceiling of what he can be at a head coach. You might have saw it with Coach Stoops at Kentucky.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, recruiting or experience, I should say, at Texas A&M, huge plus for Mike Elko over Stoops, and frankly, the 10-year age gap. I think honestly, if you're going to go try to be a long-lasting situation, Stoops probably has maybe 10 to 15 years. I mean, if Elko works out, you might get 20, 25 years. And that is a big difference when you kind of think big picture. If you want like a Nick Saban like run or a Kirby Smart
you made the point last night when we were talking about Coach Stoops. This Texas A&M team, what have they lacked? It never felt like a program culture. It always felt like a team of a lot of talent. What was their identity as a program? You didn't know. You're bringing Mike Elko to implement a program culture at Texas A&M. So you're not only having these flash in the pan years of 10, 12 win seasons, but you're consistently being a national championship contender your whole 10-year in College Station. Got a ton of confidence that Mike Elko is going to be able to do that. Our next podcast, I think we're going to be talking about with Texas A&M is evaluating the offensive coordinator hire. I think that's a massive story to the hiring of Mike Elko. There are some of our thoughts. Big fan of Mike Elko. Big fan of what he can do in College Station. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll be talking a lot of Aggies football over the next couple weeks. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.